Greetings. The city of Ferguson, Missouri mounted itself not only in American history, but as well as in pop culture once it got a hashtag placed next to its name. It also once again brought America's attention and the world's attention to an issue that has not received recognition since the Rodney King incident, which took place in the early 90s in Los Angeles, California. The issue being of race relations and police brutality in America. In a New York Times editorial titled "Race and Voting Rights in Ferguson," the editorial board discusses some of these issues, insinuating that these issues may be some of the reasons why the city is battling a familiarity that this nation has seen with cities like Ferguson, Los Angeles, New York City, and other cities. However, I believe the three main common threads between these cities is racism in America, race relations in the law, and what the African American community should do in light of these issues that I believe the New York Times editorial did not include in their analysis. While I have your attention for the next few minutes, I will be discussing these three main common threads, these three main issues that I believe are plaguing the African American communities like Ferguson in America. In the New York Times editorial, they made a claim describing the history of the Ferguson community as being entrenched by segregation and economic inequality. However, that is just barely skimming the surface of what the root of it all truly is. Segregation and economic inequality are real issues, along with the overall issue of racism, which is plaguing a lot of Black communities in America, similar to those of Ferguson. In an article titled "The Race Discrimination System," written by Barbara Ruskin, she describes discrimination as, quote, interdependent, race-linked disparities, Black-white residential segregation, and disparities in schooling, employment, earnings, healthcare, credit markets, and the criminal justice system, among others, constitute a system whose emergent property is uber or meta discrimination, meaning that this discrimination only helps racism, affecting society's beliefs and values of color and worthiness, which is what recent protesters have been trying to convey with the simple hashtag Black Lives Matter. This quote also brings to light how racism or discrimination does affect the Black community on a daily basis, with employment, schooling, and such and so forth. The New York Times editorial also addressed issues of misrepresentation of government and city officials, and also took a look at the issue of at-large voting in communities like Ferguson. These issues are very valid. However, there is no coincidence that these issues and other related issues, like police brutality, are a result of race and the law here in America. There is a correlation between the law and racism in America. From slavery to present day, the issue of racism, along with colorism, prejudice, discrimination, and stereotypes, has been one that has placed an overcast in the great American sky. In a review written by Cassandra Chaney and Ray Robertson, titled "Racism and Police Brutality in America," it states, quote, since Black people in general, and Black males in particular, are caricatured as aggressive and criminal, police are more likely to view Black men as a threat, which justifies the disproportionate use of deadly force. Therefore, it is not beyond the realm of possibility that police officers' decisions to act aggressively may to some extent be influenced by race. This has been the mindset of certain individuals and a narrative that has been in place for generations, affecting the Black community like those of Ferguson. This quote also shows how race and law can be connected. And police brutality is one extreme example of it, along with another example of the number of Black men that are incarcerated today and how it outnumbers the number of Black men who were in slavery 150 years ago. The New York Times editorial did provide one way of how to solve these issues of race and voting rights in America, saying that it is important to protect the interests of minorities of all kinds. Racism and how it affects the law are issues that will continuously be fought against. However, it would have been nice to see the New York Times editorial provide the Black community with a more specific game plan on how to combat these issues that are detrimental to communities like Ferguson. I believe that it is time for the Black community to begin implementing a more self-help mentality, similar to the efforts of the UNIA led by Mr. Marcus Garvey. What is the UNIA, you may ask? The Universal Negro Improvement Association was an organization founded by Marcus Garvey in 1914. This organization was one of the most influential amongst the Black community, along with organizations like the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, led by Dr. Martin Luther King, and the Black Panther Party, led by Huey P. Newton. In an article which was written in the March 2009 issue of Journal of Black Studies, written by Bonnie Young Lane, it examines each of these organizations and their framework. The article states, one strategy was to create local self-help initiatives that carried out programs to address the everyday survival needs of organization members. Examples include the UNIA cooperative industries that provided employment, a health corps to care for the sick, and financial services for members who fell on hard times. I would personally include more after-school programs for the youth, similar to the Black Panther Party, which gives the youth something to do rather than getting into mischief, than having the law discipline them like dogs or target practice. If the Black community would begin to implement more self-help programs on a national level, it could change the narratives and the stereotypes of the Black community. In conclusion, the New York Times editorial titled Race and Voting Rights in Ferguson did highlight some important issues that are plaguing the Black communities like Ferguson. However, with the New York Times being such a reputable publication, I was saddened to see that it did somewhat overlook the three big pink elephants in the room. Communities and cities like Ferguson, Missouri are dealing with issues of race and voting rights, but they are also, and more importantly, dealing with issues of racism in America, race relations in the law, and finally, the Black community must take an introspective look at what it can begin doing for itself. These heavy-weighted issues will not be fixed overnight. However, we will only continue to prolong progress if we do not decide to address these issues at the root. The New York Times editorial did highlight some things that should be said. However, overall, I believe that it is time for the Black community to begin to take the initiative, regardless of what I or the New York Times has to say. Thank you guys so much for watching, and stay motivated.